So I then knew that he would be ripe for developing an addiction because as I educated myself more about who he was and who I had, I also had to look at the fact that Joe and I, we met both when we were in recovery, both having made this incredibly big life change to get sober in our 20s. And again, then I was going to get my master's in social work. And I remember learning about nature and nurture, the chicken and the egg. And we didn't put as much emphasis on the power of genes back then. So I remember, and perhaps I was just naive and dismissing anything that had crossed, my path. But I thought, okay, well, we'll, we'll just nurture and love our children so much that we're going to prevent them from also developing this disease. And little did I know then, and recently just read statistics to suggest that if one of your parents has struggled with addiction, you are 2 to 4 times as likely to develop it yourself. If both of your parents do, you are up to 8 times more likely to develop addiction. So this has been a big part of my path,
Mhm.
is this legacy of addiction, having been raised by an alcoholic father and then ending up being fortunate enough to stop drinking myself and change my life. And then
And
being,
how old were you?
I was 25 when I stopped drinking. So,
So how
and
did you know that you needed to stop? Like,
truth be told, since we're getting real and
yeah.
boy, do I love getting real. One of the gifts of putting this book in the world is that I bring everything to bear. The only thing what I learned as I had opportunities to like literally go to mediums and channel Christopher's spirit and ask him what he thought about my writing and sharing his life story was that he wanted me to speak the truth in hopes that it would serve others.
Mm.
And so reaching for beautiful in some ways is to help other grieving parents feel less alone, but it's also to help anyone grieving or to help anyone raising a child who struggles with addiction because you're automatically then put in this position of high stakes. And I thought it was my job to try to prevent this from happening. And I couldn't. I couldn't.
So,
And
yeah, sorry. I hate
no,
to do
to
that, but I
answer your
just want to.
question, because I started to go in different
Okay.
directions.
No, it's fine. So like with addiction, um, what's the difference between someone who likes to drink and someone who has an addiction? Yeah, has an
Yes.
addiction. Like
So
what?
sort of coming back, that's right,
How
to
would
getting
a parent
real.
know? Yeah, that
Yes,
that is.
I was an '80s girl, and so, particularly at that time, there were other substances that were on trend, and one of which is something that I started to abuse, and it scared me, and my father, during a brief period of his own sobriety, had said to me, "You know what? Um, I am an alcoholic." We didn't even have the words for it before that. And and so you might find that you end up feeling, and I said, well, I remember on being on the phone with him, well, how do you know, Dad, if you've crossed that line? And he said, you determine what you think is a reasonable amount to drink, and you never exceed that. Something about not having a stop button
Mm.
is a really good telltale. um, Ending up suffering really negative consequences and still continuing to abuse substances is another telltale. And I got lucky. The fact that I started to abuse a drug scared me. I didn't want to die. And that's what
You
brought
say
me.
which one it was?
That was, yes, cocaine.
Cocaine.
That was what shifted the course of my life. It was really wild that in doing that, I got frightened enough to seek help because the timing was such that my dad had suggested this might also be a problem. I wasn't ready to let go of drinking then, but I'm really glad I did. I'm
Mm.
really glad I did. And it
So
made such a difference.